What's up? It's Raphael with NBA Draft Junkies back again. It's been a little while since I really talked NBA draft on this website. We're a few days away from the actual draft, and so I wanted to have a guest on to talk about his big board. He actually sent it to me last week. Very interesting. At least for me, I always am curious to see what other people's big board looks like, especially in a draft like this, because I mean, you really can't be wrong. Nobody really knows what's going to happen. There's no surefire number one pick. I see maybe 4 or 5 guys that are number one on different big boards. And so, like I said, I like to hear different people's big boards and their perspective as to why they have players ranked as high as they do. And so today's guest is Korey Knepper. Korey, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, Raphael, thanks for having me. I'm
No,
excited to be able to talk some basketball.
yeah, no problem. I mean, it's kind of weird talking NBA draft in mid-August, but here we are, and we're still 2 months away from the actual draft. So this is just weird times for everyone.
Yeah, bubble's been going pretty well, though. I don't know. I mean, playing game was a pretty good success from what I saw. CJ McCollum went off. So it's been some fun time, though, watching a lot of basketball.
Yeah, it's going to be weird talking NBA draft during the play. Well, I mean, I guess in normal years you talk it during the playoffs because the lottery is always in like the first round of the playoffs. But it's like the draft is going to be going on. All the draft talk is going to be going on, and then it's like what, a couple days after possibly Game 7 of the finals,
Yeah.
and then it's right after that it's in the free agency. It's just weird talking about it at this late in the year. We're normally, you know, talking
And we don't
about
get to see these guys in summer league or
no
anything like
summer
that.
league.
So there's going to be diving in. I don't know if we're even going to I haven't heard. Are they doing a combine yet, or have they
Not that
still not
I mean,
decided on it?
well, I know they had the list of guys that they invited, so I don't know if it's a virtual combine or not.
Yeah.
So, all right,
Figure at least get the
let's
measurables for some of these guys.
yeah, but then how do you know if they're accurate? Because if
Yeah.
it's not the official ones. So let's get started on your big board. All right,
hmm
and who do you have as the number one player on your 2020 NBA draft big board?
So first of all, just because, like we said about this draft being, there is no clear-cut number one pick. Just because someone is number one on my big board would not mean that I would say every team should take this player number one overall.
Right.
I kind of look at it as if I have an expansion team, and who would I think would be the best building block moving forward. And for me, that is James Wiseman. And guy was number one overall recruit coming out of high school, pretty consensus. And we're talking 7'1", 240, 7'6" wingspan, 9 foot over, like 9'4" standing reach. This guy is a rim protector dream. I mean, he's fantastic. He's going to be able to do that really, really well, and he runs like a deer. Like, that's just it's a freak athlete that's hard to find, and an athlete or in a draft where there's not a lot of that.
Right.
And although that him getting screwed by the NCAA didn't help a whole lot with his draft stock, so obviously it's going to be over a year since he's played a competitive game whenever he plays his first NBA game.
He's not the only one. I mean, there's a few other
Yeah.
guys that it's been a full year. So, in your opinion, why do you think his stock is all over the place on a lot of different draft boards?
I think a lot of people didn't see a whole lot of him in college and they think he didn't play against anybody, which is kind of true. I mean, that Oregon team was the only team that he really played against that was good.
He was in foul
But
trouble the first half.
yeah, but overall, when you see the measurables, I don't see why he. I said one of the big reasons I put him number one is if you had me bet on who is in this draft class is most likely to make an all-star team, I'd put my money on Wiseman 100%. I have no doubt about it. So I think it's a matter of a lot of people don't understand what his floor is because they haven't seen him go through any bad times. And so I think that's one reason why they get scared of putting him up higher.
So
Because the
what
last
is
thing you want is a big man that you draft in the first round, top 5 pick, and he doesn't make it to a second contract.
right? So what is your thoughts on the people that say that drafting a big and so high in the lottery doesn't make sense because you can get that same value later on or in free agency, and as if like you can't build around a big like a rim protector, or I mean I don't even I think he has the potential to be a rim protector. I don't know if um he deserves that label right now, but more
Yeah.
so the people that say you can't build around a vertical lob threat. So what's your thought process behind still having him number one in today's
So
NBA?
I don't think I don't think there's a single guy in this draft that you're looking at going, he's going to be the best player on my championship level team.
Right.
I don't see one future MVP in this draft. So for Wiseman, I see him as basically the best option to be a number 2 level guy on an NBA on a championship contender. So with him being, yeah, he's if he gets to where he can play a really good drop coverage like a Brook Lopez does, with his athleticism, he's going to be able to be a really, really good rim protector if he can, learn that part. I think also him being off for so long, part of what people look at is his weight. Say he's a little bit skinny, I bet he's probably bulked up a little bit, and he's probably shot a lot of shots.
Right.
And if you can get a big that can space the floor like that, then you found yourself a really, really valuable player. I mean, I wouldn't say he'd be like Kristaps Porzingis spacing or Cat spacing, obviously, but guy who can possibly space the floor, be a real vertical threat. He's going to need a good point guard to be with him, though.
All right. So best fit for him. We're still a week away from the lottery. And if you have him number one on your big board, what is the ideal team that you would like to see him go to?
I think he would do really well in Charlotte. I think you give him Devontae Graham spacing out, and he runs a pretty good pick and roll as a ball handler. The only Terry Rozier doesn't really, but uh, I think him and Charlotte would be a really, really good fit. Give him an opportunity to get a lot of usage and really learn a lot, and kind of help him develop, but also give him a team where they're running pick and roll. They have decent spacing. It's not going to be an extremely crowded floor. Or if Detroit doesn't re-sign Christian Wood, I think he'd be a really, really good fit in Detroit too.
Yeah, even if they do resign Christian Wood, I still think it may make sense.
Yeah.
But I also feel like they'll go with a point guard, number one. But it at this point, we never know. What about Golden State? Do you think that would be a good fit if they had the number one pick?
I don't know about Golden State because they do like to run a lot of switch-heavy defenses, and I don't think that would be best for Wiseman. I think it'd be better for Okongwu, but Wiseman isn't as switch-heavy, especially right now. You kind of need him in a spot where he can be in a real heavy pick and roll offense kind of thing. And I think if he could get utilized like a Dwight Powell in uh, Dallas before he got hurt, would be like perfect for him his rookie year.
Right. And so that's why I wonder why people say I can get that type of player later on as opposed to number one.
I think rookie year, he's going to be that type of player.
Okay.
But whenever we get to
Prime
year
years.
3 of his contract, we could see him being a guy who can space the floor to the corners and, probably be a 20 points, 12 rebounds, 2 blocks kind of guy. And I think that's a very attainable spot for him. And there's only, I think, 5 guys in the NBA that are around that level right now. and they're all really, really valuable players.
All right. Number 2 on your list.
So 2 and 3, I go back and forth on. I tend to lean towards Killian Hayes as my number 2 over Anthony Edwards because Hayes has shown more effort defensively. He's played in a better league already, and I think his floor is higher. And I think I mentioned this to you on the write-up part. I really value defense in my looks. I think most of your championship level teams are typically top 5 defensive teams.
Right.
So I really like to look at defense whenever I look at a prospect, and that's why I think Hayes has a good amount of potential to be a guy who can guard 1s and 2s and spot up, also be a good pick and roll ball handler. He's got to work on that right hand though.
Yeah.
He finish small and do pocket passes and lobs with that hand, and he'll be in good shape.
Yeah. Anybody that's been watching the show or kept up with my podcast or website knows that I'm a really big fan of Killian, and I have him as my number 1 point guard. And I agree. I think that I have him high because he plays both sides of the ball. And I think despite the fact that he only plays with one hand, he was pretty good. And I think if you can get him to develop that offhand and he can run pick and rolls to both sides of the floor. And I thought that he was a really good finisher, despite like not being like this high flyer or whatever. And he still only used one hand. So I'm really high on Killian. I like of course I like his court vision. I definitely believe in his shot improving. I think that with the free throw percentage. I think that he has superstar potential. I mean, I guess anytime you have a guy this high, you're hoping that they have superstar potential. But I definitely see him as the best guard in this draft. And for me, the gap that I have over Killian over the next guys is below him is actually pretty significant because it's transitioning to your guy number 3. I think Anthony Edwards may be the most talented, but I just have a lot of question marks about him on the defensive end. Question marks: can he play next to somebody that's good? Because we haven't seen that. We've only seen him as the man on all these different teams. He didn't play like USA Basketball. I've never seen him play with anybody that is good, and he's lost a lot of games. So I'm really interested in seeing how he fits alongside other players that are better than him, or he's in a situation that isn't necessarily set up for him to be a volume shooter. And so that's why I think I have Hayes above him, even though Hayes, his team wasn't good at all this year in Germany, and they actually played a little bit better when he wasn't there towards the end of the season. But I don't think that's as big as a red flag for me as it is for Anthony Edwards, because Edwards didn't win on the high school level or AU.
Yeah. I was kind of upset to see, I think it was Claxton last year.
Yep.
Stayed in the draft because I really wanted to see what Anthony Edwards would do with a player like that on his team. And him leaving, it kind of made it to where there was just nobody really there at Georgia. And he had like that Michigan State game was just unbelievable.
Right.
And where he dropped, what was it, like 31 in the second half?
Yeah.
And he looks like the kind of guy where you see him and you're like, he looks like a dude. He might be the best athlete in this draft.
Yeah.
But to your point, does he really want to win? Because he didn't put himself in a situation to win at college. He didn't put himself in a situation to win in high school. So,
or AAU.
Does he really care about that?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think with him it's so obvious about the talent and the skill level. It seems like it's a lot of just naturally God-given talent. But the big question mark is, why doesn't he do more? Like, you feel like he can do more. Like, you see the stats and on paper it looks okay, but you still feel like, well, I think he can go to the line more. I think he can attack defensive more. I think he can take better shots. I think he can defend more. I think he can put better effort more. So I feel like you're always like, more. I want more. Can he do more? Does he want to do more? And I
Is
mean, I
he
could be
Andrew
wrong.
Wiggins?
What's that?
Is he Andrew Wiggins, but 6'5", 220? And that's kind of my
Yeah.
question I get with him is he going to be that guy that's just so talented, he's never had to work, and he doesn't plan on starting now, but he's so talented that he's going to get to a second contract.
Yeah, or
And
even
a big one.
Deion Waiters.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like if it's a one-on-one playground game, not many guys can check Deion Waiters. But does his style of play, like, well, I say this, Deion Waiters, in my opinion, his style of play is suited to be the number one option, but he's not good enough to be the number one option.
Yeah.
And I think the opportunity that he had to be the number one option was in Miami, and they paid him, and he blew it. And so
blew it on edibles on a plane or whatever it was.
Right. And so, like with Anthony Edwards, if he becomes a Deion Waiters guy, I mean, which means he's going to make a lot of money, which means he'll probably like play 10 years in the NBA, make hundreds of millions of dollars. But Deion Waiters was like the fourth pick in the draft, if I'm not mistaken. He was.
Yeah, he was fourth pick because I think they took Kyrie number one that year.
Yeah. Well, no, I think Kyrie was in the same year as Thompson.
Was that?
I think Kyrie and Thompson were in the same year, and then maybe Deion.
No, they had all sorts of picks.
That. Yeah, they had quite a few high picks. But yeah, I just feel like, Deion's kind of bounced around from Cleveland to Oklahoma City to Miami. He had a good situation there in Miami. He ends up in LA. And I feel like this playoffs, he's kind of fighting for his career in a sense. I mean, he'll get another invite to training camp or whatever like that. Yeah. But, just as far as like long-term money, and a lot of it is off the court stuff, but there is a questionable fit for him. Unless you have him as a six man and you just run your offense.
I think that's where he's perfect.
Right.
And so I think Anthony Edwards in his first couple of years needs to be either on a really bad team or be a sixth man on a good team. I don't really know which one it is, but
I don't either.
I think he needs just development time. I mean, he's still young. He did reclassify up.
Yeah.
To be in this draft class.
Well, here's where I'm concerned about that.
Because next year's is stacked.
Yeah, definitely. It's better than this class. At least we think it is. But here's what I'm concerned about, because if he goes to a really bad team, I think whatever bad habits that he has and whatever question marks that we have about him, I think those become even bigger because actually, I don't even know if the bad team that he would go on, he would still be the number one option, because if he goes to Minnesota, no. If he goes to Atlanta, no. If he goes to Chicago,
Detroit and they keep Derrick Rose, I mean, still no.
Yeah. So I don't know where he could go and be the number one option. Maybe New York, but he's fighting with RJ for shots.
They need a point guard so bad.
Yeah. And so so I don't know where he would get a chance to go to be number one option, but he does seem like a guy that if he is in a situation where he doesn't have a lot of structure around him, he's going to put up big numbers and they're just going to be like empty calories.
Is he would he OJ Mayo it? Like OJ Mayo's like first 2 years in the league, he averaged like close to 20 points a game, and then all of a sudden they got good players and he just sucked. And
yeah, I think I think OJ's issue was more so, I think he just peaked early. He was so dominant in high school at an early age. I remember seeing him on ESPN when he was in 8th grade, and I think everything came so easy to him. Also think that he liked the NBA lifestyle and the money that came along with it, and that just kind of led to a bunch of other things. But then, I mean, it may not be too bad of a comparison. I mean, I don't know. I mean, you don't want to start talking bad about a kid and putting him in the box with all these players with these negative reputations. But I
that's
definitely
like
think
the
there's
floor I see for him.
yeah.
It's like that's the part that scares me from making him the number one on my big board is that because he is outrageously talented.
Right.
He's a 6'5" blazing guy that's strong, long, and can dribble with both hands and finish with both hands.
Right.
Those are very, very few of those guys are around, especially in this draft.
Yep.
But it's just a matter of what's he going to be shot selection wise.
And even like, I mean, the Oladipo comparison to me is good because even with Victor, his first few years, he didn't live up to where he was drafted. But then it clicked once he went to Indiana. I remember him talking about just learning from Westbrook in that situation in Oklahoma City. And now, I mean, he's definitely going to end up he's going to be an all-star. He's going to live up to his draft situation. But it took for him to kind of bounce around for him to get in it. You know, I read about his diet. He just said that he changed what he did and all of that. So, you know, it just kind of shows like OJ Mayo was the opposite of Oladipo. Mayo had a good rookie year, second year. I think they even tried to put him at point one year in the summer league.
Yeah.
And that didn't work out. But then it just seemed like, honestly, after the Tony Allen fight, it went all downhill.
Yeah.
It went downhill for him, and now he's out the league. But, you know, I keep up with basketball all over the world. He did have a 34-point game in China a couple of days ago, and his team went to the finals. So he's made some pretty good money, but he definitely didn't live up to, you know, the potential that he had.
Yeah.
So for Edwards, and like I said, I don't want to talk all negative about the kid. I mean, I don't know him. I've never met him. I've never really heard anything bad about him.
I think it's Mike Schmitz or whatever, the guy from ESPN does like interviews with all the prospects.
Yep.
And when you see the interview with Anthony Edwards, he seems like a real good kid. He's got his head on his shoulders and understands he needs to put some work in. So I think his would also be kind of, if we see an interview process with him, you might be able to see something out of him.
Right.
But,
so what is your best case scenario for him as far as like potential wise as a player, and then what team do you think would be a good fit?
Potential-wise, I think he's got the potential to be a number 2 scoring option on a really good offense and also has the potential to be a lockdown, possibly all-NBA defensive level player.
But that's just based off of his physical tools.
Based off of
nothing
just his
that we've
physical
seen.
Tools. Yeah. If he just somehow, I mean, he puts his mind to being a scorer, and that's why I think Atlanta would end up being a good spot for him, to where he wouldn't have to worry about working on ball a whole lot with Trey being there, and they need all the defense they can get there with Trae Young being that going to be a guy who's going to play 38 minutes a night most likely. He's kind of a turnstile right now, so you're going to need some defensive help, and if he can just put his focus towards the defensive end, I think you're looking at a guy who could be an amazing player on that end. It's just the tools are all there.
You know what? I'm not a fan of the Atlanta fit. One, I'm not a fan of putting teenagers in their hometown with a bunch of money.
Yeah.
So that's one aspect of it. Two, if he doesn't buy in on defense, so now you have him and Trae Young together in the backcourt. And I mean, unless, Hunter and Reddish become lockdown defenders and Collins and, Capella, I don't know. I just think like it's hard to be a good team with bad guards.
Yeah.
On defense. And, you have to be a phenomenal offensive team to do that. And so,
I mean, look at Portland. Phenomenal offensive team with 2 amazing guards on offense, but neither one's a good defender, and they're in the 8th seed because of it.
Yeah, but also last year they were in the
100 points a game.
They were in the Western Conference Finals last year with they had solid guys. So I'm a Blazers fan also, and I mean we just don't have any wing depth, and I mean losing Ariza hurts. I mean maybe in the best case scenario, Trae Young and Anthony Edwards can be that type of backcourt where they feed off of each other. The thing I wonder though, I mean, like I said, he's still young, so he has plenty of opportunity to grow. Anthony Edwards wasn't good at catch and shoot off the ball, and
Yeah.
so with Trae Young, he's unless they, Lloyd Pierce or whoever is going to be coaching him in the future gets creative, because I think that Trae is probably needs to come off the ball some. I think that will, giving them another like creator will open him up just like it kind of does for Dame in a sense. But I don't know. Like I can't think of a really good fit in my opinion for Edwards. I still think maybe even like a Charlotte in a sense, because I feel like they have some good complementary pieces. But if I'm swinging for the fences. Like I'm taking the guy that has the most superstar potential. And so I think Charlotte could be good. Detroit possibly. I read something. I didn't, I don't know how true it is, but I read somewhere that Golden State, if they had the number 1 pick, they would take him.
It would, yeah.
I think that's
an
interesting fit. I don't know how it would work, but I guess they would. I don't know. I guess it could be good for him in a sense, because he would be in a situation where you have to buy in or you don't play.
Or you're basically labeled like cancer to the rest of the league, because if you can't buy in on that team, then what team are you going to buy in on?
Yeah.
Yeah, whenever I don't see the Warriors keeping their pick most likely. I bet they're probably going to pair that with that trade exception from Iggy and drop down and pick up a player.
Right.
But unless they can get, I mean, like I said before, I think Okongwu would do great there.
Yeah.
But that gets us to, and that can get us to our number 4. So, like you did say that you're well traveled. You've watched ball all over the world, and I'm torn between my 4 and 5 here. So I have Okongwu as my number 4, and then LaMelo as my 5th. When it comes to the NBL, how good of a league is that in comparison to, the leagues that are in Europe, the Israeli league that Denny's in, the German league that Hayes is in? Because the most recent article I could see on it basically said that it's like the 10th best league in the world.
Well, it depends, because in Europe they have the domestic league, and then they may play in like the Euro League or the Euro Cup.
Yeah.
So, for Killian, he played in the Euro Cup. Then he played in the Euro League, which, in my opinion, the Euro League is the second best league in the world. I think if you rank it by domestic leagues, that's tough. I think Spain is the best. Then after Spain, I think the Turkish league is pretty good. Italy can be pretty good, but it varies from year to year based off the money.
Yeah.
Like if the money is bad in Turkey, which it kind of has been, then the Turkish league is going to drop off. I've only, as far as just like watching in person, I've only seen one game in the NBL, and I don't think it's a good league. I think the German league would be better. That Killian played in. The Israeli league isn't that good.
Played in.
What's that?
Or the Spanish league that like Balmero's playing in.
Yeah, the ACB is tough. I mean,
yeah.
To me, that's the best league. Turkey a couple years ago was really strong because they had, at one point they had up to like 3 EuroLeague teams from Turkey in there. No, maybe 4. Maybe 4. At one point there was 4. Then, Spain would have, of course, Madrid, Barcelona, Valencia is pretty good. But those teams couldn't compete the Australian teams couldn't compete in, like the EuroLeague. Maybe the best Australian team could do well in the Euro Cup. I'm not for sure. But no, I'm not a big fan of the Australian league. I think that they have a few interesting prospects coming up, but I think the reason why players are going there is because it's just the easiest league as far as
Language barrier
language
and league.
transitioning and all of that. And then they'll actually give young players an opportunity. The thing about the Euro League is in the Euro Cup, there's so much pressure for teams to win that they really don't give younger guys the opportunity unless they really, really earned it and they're much better. While like even with Denny, they didn't really play him to his strengths in the EuroLeague. He played well, after the break. But again, the Israeli league isn't a really strong league in my opinion.
Yeah.
Also, so no, I don't. I'm not a really big fan of the NBL.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the stat difference between if you per 36 minute it for uh, Lonzo Ball and Killian Hayes, it does look like, or LaMelo Ball and Killian Hayes, then yeah, Ball has better stats, but he played with way higher usage rate and in a much worse league. So that's why I see that, and that's why he's a little bit lower on my list. I see other people who have number one because his playmaking is insane. But before we get to five, there, I guess we should look at Okongwu at four, his high school teammate.
Right.
Um, he's one who I think by the time he gets to the prime of his career, he's going to be a walking top 10 defense. Like he's going to be that kind of player that is just so solid defensively, all NBA defender multiple time. And offensively, he's a lower ceiling than Wiseman, I think. Uh, with Wiseman's shot looks a little bit better, but that might just be because he's left-handed and all lefties look like they shoot really well. Um, but I did see Okongwu recognizes that he needs to work on his shot, so we'll see if he can get to the corner and space the floor a little bit. I think he'll be pretty serviceable on offense, but a stud on defense.
Yeah, I think that I have him pretty high. I mean, I haven't updated my big board in a while, but he's someone after like taking a second and third look at different players that I have him higher than I initially had him. I love him in the post. He finishes with both hands. I think he can play multiple roles. I think you can dump the ball down to him if you need a basket in the post. I think he can be your vertical lob threat. And then watching like Nurkic play the last few games
Mm-hmm.
gives me hope that Okongwu can be a similar type player, but more athletic and a better defender.
Better
Even though I think
defensively.
Nurk is a solid defender, but just Nurk's touch around the basket, and he's wide, but he's also nimble. And then if Okongwu he showed flashes of being a decent passer, like showed some
Yeah.
flashes. He didn't read double teams well, at least early in the year, but I think he was kind of being punished in a sense because he didn't have a lot of floor spacing. So I would love to
Mm-hmm.
see him with floor spacing because they ran two bigs at USC, and I don't think they shot the ball well from three. So if he can be like a more athletic, better defending Nurkic, that's a pretty good pick.
Yeah. Uh, yeah, my perfect fit for him is the Minnesota Timberwolves. I think if he goes there, I think him and Karl Anthony Towns could play together since Karl Anthony Towns might be the best shooting big man ever.
Yeah,
I mean, he's
40%
insane.
on a high volume. So
Yeah,
I don't think it's really a debate.
yeah. And I think if you get a Kongu, you can stagger him. I mean, Towns is not, he hasn't developed defensively as well as people thought he would. So I think they kind of would complement each other a lot. And you could stagger their minutes to where they're not on the floor. One of them's always on the floor at all times. And I think that would make Towns a lot better player if he can, go in the post whenever Kongu's not there, but he can also step out and you can run some pick and roll with D'Angelo Russell. I think they would. I think that would be the spot that would take them on their next step up towards playoff contention in the next year or two.
You're not the first person that has said that. I've seen that a few times. My question would be, all right, who closes? And so when you got your closing lineup, if that's your starting five and they both close together, I mean, does Towns guard like stretch fours?
Yeah,
So I would think that teams would just try to find ways to get him in pick and rolls and just really like pick at him. I think that would make the team better, like as far as like the next step. But I just wonder like how would they close games?
yeah. You'd have to save up some timeouts and make sure that you can swap them in and out maybe some from time to time. But I think most stretch fours, I think Towns would be okay with.
Yeah.
It's the elite ones that everybody has problems with that he would have problems with.
Yeah. And I just wonder like because he's been the five, you know, does are his natural instincts to get back on defense and protect the rim?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you remember the series Miami when they played Oklahoma City in the finals, and when Miami went small, they had Perkins at the five, and he would
Yeah.
literally run back and protect the paint, and he would just leave whoever, Battier or Bosch, he would just leave them wide open for threes in the corner. And I wonder, like, would would that be something Cat does? Because, like you said, he hasn't developed like people thought he would. And remember, coming into his draft, people thought Okafor was the better offensive player,
Mm-hmm.
but Towns was the much better defender.
Yeah.
Actually, today, I don't know who's the better defender of the two. Offensively, I mean, obviously,
Offensively, it's not a question. I
yeah,
remember thinking that Okafor was going to bring up back to the basket center was going to be back in fashion because of him. Uh, I was wrong on that one.
and it's
But
funny because he's not like he hasn't. I don't know. I just think that he could still do what we expected him to do if given the right opportunity. I just don't know if he'll get it just because I don't know. I mean, maybe if he can get a team to give him like the Enes Kanter role,
yeah,
and you just kind of run stuff through him with the second unit. I don't know. I mean, I just think like he's gonna have to find the right fit, and or else he's gonna be in China.
yeah, putting up 40 a game over there,
Yeah.
uh, like Jimmer Fredette.
So
But
you
yeah, Kongu, one of the big reasons I liked him a lot too is he's the kind of guy where he can play in pretty much any defensive scheme.
Yep.
Because he can switch or he can drop back, and I think that's another spot where he'd be. I think also Golden State would be a
Yep.
fantastic fit for him as well.
So for Kongu and Wiseman, so obviously you think Wiseman has the higher upside. Who do you think
Mm-hmm.
has the higher floor?
I think Wiseman. I think Wiseman's floor is basically Clippers DeAndre Jordan,
Okay.
which is a top high or even current Andre Drummond. I mean, high rebounder, uh, high level rebounder, can score on the paint, lob threat. He'll get you, maybe 4 points a game off of putbacks, and he might go for a bunch of block shots and get out of position. That's one of the big worries with him, from my opinion, because we don't have enough video to see
Right.
if he's going to be kind of like Whiteside does, where he chases blocks and then leaves wide open dump offs right in the middle of the paint. So it all depends on if he ends up doing that or if he kind of figures out what he's doing down low. But he's still young.
All right. So I would guess Charlotte will probably be a team that you think is a good fit for him if he's
Mm-hmm.
available. I like Golden
Charlotte
State
just needs a big
also.
man.
Yeah. Yeah, my brother thinks Charlotte should just run with PJ at the five.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Eh.
his. He said just go small, get you a wing, score, and use PJ. I mean, the way the NBA is getting smaller and smaller, you never know. But I do think that center should be like their first
priority.
priority. But then I also feel like I said earlier, if you're Charlotte, you have to just swing for the fences. Just don't go safe. Go for the guy that you think, if you trust your development team, that can be your number one. All right, so let's move on to number 5. You already mentioned him, LaMelo Ball.
So LaMelo, as everybody knows, is his passing vision is out of this world.
Mm-hmm.
Um, However, I have some areas that are just a real question mark about him is his lack of a first step and real burst off the dribble, along with his kind of lack of strength at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think he can really become a scorer without on an against an NBA defense without at least a screen or two in front of him. So you're already having to scheme everything for him to be a scorer. Uh, Also, his lack of, let's call it, focus on defense has been a problem at times and is not going to fly well with veterans in the NBA. Like that kind of stuff would not go over very well, I don't think. But overall, it's kind of, he's another one of those guys where he's kind of like Anthony Edwards, where you don't really know, the ceiling and the floor are very, very, very far apart. Um, but I still see his floor being a guy who maybe is that Deion Waiters role where he just runs a second unit and just runs pick and roll and does really well with that. But his ceiling could be multiple time All-Star.
Yeah, it's tough because every situation he's been in has been totally set up for him to
Mm-hmm.
succeed. From the way they played at Chino Hills to well, actually, not every situation. When he had the Lithuanian coach,
Yeah,
they
he didn't like him.
yeah, he didn't like him. And then, but when his dad took over and they played in some of those other games, it was definitely set up for him to succeed. And he does need like total freedom. He does
Mm-hmm.
need a big space to be creative and throw high risk passes in order for you to get the best out of him. But I really want to see how he does with really hard coaching. Not saying his dad didn't coach him hard, but coaching from a coach that doesn't have job security. That
Yeah.
that's what I want to see. I definitely think like the focus thing is a concern because, and I told people when I went to go watch him play the one game I saw when I was out there, I didn't like the way he looked in warmups because you can watch film and film is only going to show you so much how you
Mm-hmm.
prepare. He was so lackadaisical in warmups. He had his headphones on. He was just kind of, it just looked like an AAU game as far as how you do your layup lines. Like I won't even say he had a sweat, and he wasn't
Yeah.
even working on stuff that he does in the game. Which again, he's young, so it's going to come with being a professional. How you
Hopefully.
prepare, and like for example, I did some media for the Mavericks 2 seasons ago, and I used to get to the arena like 5 o'clock just to watch how guys work out before games. And I wasn't around. I never saw Giannis when he was young, but Giannis's pregame workout was just as hard as a game. I mean, everything was game speed. He had the coaches fouling him. He was doing, I mean, just full sweat, just super intense workout. And then he still has that same energy during the game. So I said all that to say this. LaMelo just looked like, it was a Tuesday night high school game against, whoever. But it was a big game because it was a game against RJ Hampton.
Mm-hmm.
And he came out in that first half terrible. Like there were plays where he missed layups. He had a few shots blocked at the rim. He kind of got it together where you could see like his full range of talent and skills in the second half, but he had a whole half of just kind of doing nothing to warm up to it. And that same like lack of focus and lackadaisical attitude, you see it on the defensive end, and you also see it on certain possessions on offense. I do think that his lack of burst could be an issue. And one of the things I have to try to make sure I don't do is keep comparing him to his brother.
Yeah.
It's very easy to look at Lonzo's success or lack thereof and want to put Melo in that same box. I think LaMelo is a little bit more talented than Lonzo, but Lonzo can't finish at the rim. He doesn't want to finish at the rim because he doesn't want to get fouled. And he really is not doing anything on offense if he's not knocking down shots. I mean, yeah, he's passing the ball ahead early, but how much of a threat can you be as a point guard if you can't get in the rim and everybody's, going underneath your screens and kind of taking away the roll man? So I think that Lonzo hasn't improved, in my opinion, on any of his weaknesses. Outside of shooting, I mean, he became a better three-point shooter. But as far as like the mid-range,
8 games in the bubble, but
yeah, he just really
I think
like
he only made like 1 3.
Yeah, it was like 20-something% from the field and from three. But Lonzo never improved as a finisher. He hasn't improved as a pull-up, his pull-up game. And he's only improved as a standstill shooter, which before the bubble, he shot about 38%, but teams still weren't closing out on him. So he was still getting really good looks. And then he still has some really bad misses. So I have some questions about his touch. So I said all that because I don't want to compare Melo to him because I think it's a lazy comparison. But it makes me wonder if they're being trained by the same person and they're going to be spending a lot of time together training, is Melo's weaknesses, are they still going to be there? Like, is he going to work on what he can't do well? He does have deep range on his floater. I think is kind of good for him because he's not going to be unless he's not going to be a great finisher at the rim. I think you need to have like some soft touch finishes. I have questions about him finishing at the rim also.
Yeah.
So I have a lot of question marks about him overall. I think he might be sliding a little bit, and maybe he's sliding because this is the longest draft process ever.
Yeah.
And it's been like it's been like 8 months since he's played a game. And I watched most of his film before the new year started, and there really hasn't been anything new since. So it could be a situation where I'm over evaluating because, like I said, it's been a long time and there's only like 14 games to choose from. But I do have some question marks, like I have about all the prospects in the draft. But I do think that he has a really, really high ceiling, but then he has a floor that could really cost some guys their jobs. Like if I don't know, it's you have to gamble on which do you think is more likely, him reaching his ceiling or his floor. If he can fall somewhere in the middle, then I don't know if he's a 5-year starter.
Yeah. Yeah, that's about how I look at him, is there's just so much. I mean, that shooting stats aren't good. I'm looking at now 25% from three. I mean, shot selection, obviously not great. His true shooting percentage was basically 46%. Like that ain't gonna fly. But man, that playmaking is insane.
Yeah, you can't teach what he has.
Yeah.
But that's what I'm worried about. Like, all right, let's say he goes to Detroit. Is Dwayne Casey going to give him the freedom to throw all of those passes.
Yeah.
And if you take away that part and you want him to be a little bit more conservative, you could lose him.
Yeah.
And
Because then he's playing with fear of getting
yeah,
benched and stuff, and you don't want to see that out of him either.
yeah. And then, like, for a guy like Blake Griffin, I mean, is he going to want to – he's spent the majority of his career with Chris Paul, great decision maker, guy who doesn't turn the ball over. How does he react to playing with, a teenager that's going to turn the ball over a lot? But he could surprise me. I made a prediction last year. I said Ja Morant was going to lead the NBA in turnovers because he was a high-risk passer. He still is, but he's a better decision maker than what I thought. I just saw in college, I was like, okay, he squeezes a lot of passes in these really, really small windows that won't be available in the NBA, which, I mean, he showed that he made some costly turnovers in the play-in game.
Yeah.
But he had a better year than I thought, and I was high on him. But he was a better passer and decision maker than I thought as a rookie. So Melo could make those same improvements.
Yeah, I don't think anybody had Ja being as good as he ended up being this year.
Yeah, I mean, he was a lot more efficient than I thought.
A lot.
Yeah, he was, but it was just like the thing that Ja has that I don't think LaMelo has is this leadership intangibles.
Mm-hmm.
Like Memphis, he was their engine. Like he created everything. Yeah, I mean he doesn't have that coolness about him. It's like you said, he's a dog. He's on the attack, and they just kind of like follow his lead. And so with LaMelo, even Lonzo was supposed to have that winning intangible where he just makes everyone better, stuff that doesn't show up on the stat sheets. I haven't seen that yet. I really didn't see it with LaMelo. His team was really bad, but Josh showed it in the NBA. He literally made everyone on that team better. All right, so that was – oh, actually, I didn't get a chance to ask you, what do you think is a good fit?
There's a lot of spots I could see him going. Chicago wouldn't be a bad one. Just kind of – I don't know what they're going to do with – but I don't know if having him and Levine on the same team are going to really mesh well. Neither one of them seems to care about playing defense. Possibly.
What do you think about him and
Cleveland?
Kobe White?
Yeah. Kobe White, I don't know if he's actually a true playmaking point guard.
He's
or if he ever is going to be, so that's why I wouldn't mind. He's more of a scorer to me. But Cleveland also wouldn't be a bad spot if they could kind of just run a 3-guard tandem of Garland coming off the bench. Sexton's not a good enough playmaker to be really the point guard of the offense. And it also keeps LaMelo away from having to guard the point guard on the other team.
Right.
So I think Cleveland wouldn't be a bad spot for him either.
What about New York?
I wonder how.
Sorry, you got to answer New York for me in 2 ways. All right. So if you're the owner, who's your pick? And then if you're Tibbs, who's your pick? So if you're the owner, do you pick LaMelo?
Man,
and if
him
you're
with
Tibbs
would be hilarious.
And that's
him with Tibbs would be hilarious. But if I'm the owner, yeah, I'm taking him. I need a point guard. And he's the box office attraction, right? Like he's probably the most hyped player in this draft. So I mean, I could see the Knicks taking him, but I don't know how he does with the very minimal spacing and the 9 power forwards that are on the roster, or however many there are going to be. But I could see them definitely going for him, and I don't know how well he would do being the guy in New York City. From what I've seen from RJ Barrett, I trust that he's got the mindset to be able to handle that. I haven't seen enough of LaMelo to say that he could or couldn't.
Well, I think he can because he's been under the microscope since he was like 14 years old. So I think if there's anybody that's prepared for the attention that comes along with it, I think that it's him that can handle the attention that, comes with being in New York City. I mean, you can honestly say that he really hasn't had a chance to be a kid in a sense because everything he did, every single AAU game, everything he did has just kind of been heavily scrutinized. And it's not even his fault. He didn't ask for the attention. It's kind of been brought on by his father, which I think the hype that his father created around Lonzo got him drafted number 2. I didn't think that he was
Jason Tatum.
Tatum, Fox. Was Mitchell in that draft too?
Donovan Mitchell, so. He might have been.
Yeah, so I never thought Lonzo was better than
Mitchell was that draft.
Fox. And even when they played heads up, Fox destroyed him. But Fox the hype around Lonzo and, LA Magic was in charge. So I think on one hand, LeVar got Lonzo a few extra $1 million in his first deal based off the hype and all that. And I mean, so I said all that Melo didn't ask for this attention, but I think that he's handled it pretty well. So like him going to New York City, I don't think is going to be a big issue for the attention because he's, as people like to say, haters. He's definitely had his fair share of,
especially after it was like 92-point game or whatever, where I don't think he passed half court to play defense.
Right.
Like the entire game.
So he's built for that. As far as like coaching, him with Tibbs would be interesting because Tibbs is win now by any means necessary. And I actually kind of like it because he's like, look, in my mind, Tibbs' theory is coaching is, very few guys live to see their second contract. I'm trying to win right now, right away, and we'll figure the rest out later.
Yeah.
And he's going to have to have some patience in New York. I still see them with his CAA ties, I still see them like getting somebody, like getting some major star to ask out. And like I've said before on this podcast, I wouldn't be shocked to see somehow, some way Chris Paul ends up in that situation just because of, win now, CAA, yada, yada, yada.
Nothing like going into your age 37 season and getting played 38 minutes a night.
Yeah. I mean, he's held up good this year. Like, I think that, people kind of forgot about how great of a player he is. So, as far as like Melo, I don't know. I'm just curious to see how him and RJ would work together. Like you said, the floor spacing would be pretty bad based off of what we've seen, how they shot this year.
Him, RJ, and Robinson all on the floor at the same time.
Yeah.
You could have anybody else out there. There's no spacing.
Yeah. Yep. So I don't know. It's that would be interesting. Do you think? So all right. Do you think that like if you're Detroit and let's say you pick number 4, which direction do you go?
Well, if I would like it if they get Killian Hayes, that would be the perfect fit right there. And then, because I think him maybe with a year or half a year with Rose, trade Rose at the trade deadline or something would be a smart spot. Him with Wood would do well. But I could see them if Hayes is gone before that. LaMelo is. I think they're looking for that primary ball handler of the future.
And box office. I think like for them, it's a situation where ownership is like, we need box office. We'll go for
Mhm.
sell some tickets, sell some jerseys, bring some excitement to the city.
I wonder how much the fact that a lot of they're probably not going to have a box office at the beginning of next year. So I wonder if that might
Yeah.
mess with the draft a little bit of someone like LaMelo.
Yeah. I didn't think of it that way. And even just some teams may look to cut costs. I think there are going to be some positions open for some draft picks because some teams are going to dump some guys. Like I even read that Phoenix, even though they had, such a strong showing in the bubble, their owner is known for being cheap, and he may end up trying to dump some assets because there's no money coming in from ticket sales.
Yeah, they're a team that I would see. I have one that I've heard. I don't know how well it would work. Would be them being able to move up with Golden State, swap picks, and throw in Kelly Oubre.
That would be interesting. I mean, it would be
Yeah.
crazy to see Phoenix even get like a top 3 pick or something like that.
Yeah.
Nothing would shock me. Well, we've done an hour and we're only at top 5. So what I would like to do is see if you will be available sometime soon within the next couple of days, and then we can finish out the lottery. That way, I mean, I'm not at the Joe Rogan level yet where I can have.
We're not at the 4-hour podcast or whatever it is.
4-hour podcast to keep everyone's attention. But I would like to have you on in the very near future, and then we can discuss 6 through 14, and then also for those that may want to follow you, are you on social media? Is there any way that they can find you?
I'm not really doing a whole lot on social media or anything at this moment. If I just kind of comment on a bunch of YouTube videos, that's how I got here.
Yeah, thanks for responding. I try to read as many as the comments as I can, and I just want to use my site as like a platform for people like yourself or other people who really love the draft to come on, because a lot of people spend time coming up with their big boards or their different lists, and then the next step is like actually putting it on the website and all that, which can be a task. But I just wanted to be able to, like I said, give people a platform to talk about their big board, their list, and just kind of pick the brains of other people who, quote unquote, are draft junkies. So I thank you for coming on. Like I said, hopefully we can have you on in the very near future. We can do part 2. And the second part of your list is pretty interesting also, because there's some guys
a lot of wings.
A
lot of scalability.
And I definitely want to hear more about it. So this is Raphael with Korey Knepper, and this is part 1 of a 2-part podcast where Korey will talk about his NBA draft big board. Thanks again for everybody for listening. If you're on YouTube and you want to listen to the podcast version, I'm on Spotify, I'm on iTunes. And also, if you're listening on iTunes and you want to see the video version of this, go to NBA Draft Junkies on YouTube. Korey, thanks again for coming on, and we are out.